All right, Matt Steinmetz, Darryl the Guru Johnson with you on 95.7 The Game. We got a big one this weekend, 125 Lincoln Financial Field. And right now we're joined by Seth Joyner, three-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. He's a speaker, current NFL analyst, and he played for the Eagles from 1986 to 1993. That's right around the time, Darryl, that I was a Eagles season ticket holder.
Oh, look at you.
So I saw Seth Joyner play quite a bit. Actually, Seth, I wasn't a season ticket holder, but my rich friend's dad was. But I remember watching you play. I remember watching you play. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great, guys. What's happening?
Just give me some thoughts on this game. I mean, I know the Eagles are I'll just set it up. I know the Eagles are in the middle of a brutal stretch. They are at home. It looks like it may be wet. It feels like the Eagles may have the right to feel a little disrespected by the Niners. You go from there.
Well, I mean, listen, the team these two teams have history from last year. A lot was said, after the game was over as to how the game played out, by some players, in San Francisco, instead of just, hey, they got the best of us today, we'll see them, down the road. It was a lot of sour grapes, and it's led to, a lot of back and forth. And, here we are. We find, in my opinion, the two preeminent teams in the NFC conference just basically, squaring off again, trying to get or secure the number one seed in the conference going into the playoffs.
Seth, I was telling my partner I follow you on Twitter or X, and you never bite your tongue. I appreciate it. You speak on what you see. And last year in the NFC Championship game, I felt like the Eagles secondary was better than it currently is now. Are you concerned about the Eagles secondary in this ball game and moving forward?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm of the opinion that the secondary and the rush work hand in hand. When you're amassing 70 sacks in a season and 78 throughout, the playoffs last year, it makes coverage on the back end easier. I've been a party to both of that. I've been a party to the guy that's actually getting the rush on the quarterback, and I've actually been the guy that's been a party to covering. When you can pass rush, it makes the coverage easy, and when the coverage is tight, it makes the pass rush easy. So it's kind of synergistic. I get the sense that the Eagles are the type of defense that, they're not a pressure defense in the least little bit. I think they're somewhere in the 15 to 20 percentile, in blitzing. That's awful low in today's NFL. They're a bend but don't break style defense. And, they're going to give up some yards because that's their mentality. They want to create explosive plays and they want to limit, the opposing team from getting explosive plays. And if that's your mindset, if your mindset isn't aggressive, then that means you're going to give up, some real estate.
Three-time Pro Bowler Seth Joyner joining us on 95.7 The Game. Seth, let me ask you this. When you were playing, what team did you hate the most? What team would you say it got the closest to personal with?
Oh, it's still personal with the Cowboys.
Okay.
I'm sure that you guys feel the same way, you feel the same way in San Francisco about the Cowboys, I'm sure.
Okay, so fair enough. So if the Eagles feel that way about the Niners, or the Niners feel that way about the Eagles, what can you describe how it matters on Sunday?
Well, it matters from an intensity standpoint. If you hate a team that much, then everything is heightened. Your preparation is heightened. Leading up into the game is heightened. The intensity of the game is heightened from, the first snap of the game. Every play in that game, it's heightened. It's similar to, a way that the NFC Championship game was last year. I mean, you're playing for all the marbles, right? And, the finality of losing that game and not moving on is massive. So I get it and I understand. Well, now there's been some bitter feelings about, how that game turned out and some innuendos as to how it would have turned out if things were different. And, now these two teams find themselves, in the throes again. I believe it's going to be a very intense game. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out game. Both teams are going to lay their absolute best on the line because listen, the 49ers, if they lose this game, for all intents and purposes, the Eagles pretty much has wrapped up the number one seed. So if the 49ers can win the game, at least they've got hope. Now you're only one game behind the Eagles. So, and then the Eagles have still got, the Cowboys next week, and then the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think anybody's worried about the Giants twice and the Cardinals, to end the season. But, it's a pivotal game for both teams because the Eagles can put themselves in prime position, to pretty much lock up the conference and the number one seed. By losing, they open the door and create a lot of drama over the next 4 weeks, how things could actually play out.
No doubt. Seth, I love talking to former players for this next question I'm about to pose to you because you got Jalen Hurts, took his team to the Super Bowl last year, MVP this season, but the Niners got Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. And, I've been on both sides of the field. I didn't know if he was real. It looked great. And now I'm like, he looks like the man. But a lot of people say he's the product of a system. The Niners as an offense, Seth, lead the league in explosive plays over 20 yards. Can you share with us your thoughts on Brock Purdy? Is it real? Do you need to see more? Where are you at?
Well, I'm going to give you the long answer because I've been trying to evaluate this offense. Back in the day, we used to play against the Redskins. They were one of our big foes, in the NFC East, back when Joe Gibbs was the head coach. And, they had one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. But they had an offense that was very multiple. Multiple from the sense that, they had interchangeable parts. Like, you could put Art Monk where Gary Clark was and put Gary Clark where Ricky Jackson was. And then you had, interchangeable tight ends, that you could move around. The backs, you had, a third down back, a first and second down back. And when I look at the San Francisco 49ers, and they did a lot of the things that San Francisco does now. They did a lot of motion, a lot of shifting. They try to, because they know that if you're from a defensive perspective, if you're calling defenses based upon formations, that motion changes formations and shifts change formations. So if I can get you in 3 or 4 different defenses before we snap the ball one time, we can create chaos and hopefully, create a mistake somewhere. Well, San Francisco's offense is pretty much like that, in that, Debo and Christian are pieces that are interchangeable. Both of them can play running back. Both of them can play in the slot. Both of them run jet sweeps efficiently. Then you got Juszczyk and Kittles, and both of them, they're interchangeable. Both of them can play fullback, and both of them can play, tight end, and they're effective in catching the ball out of the, catching the ball, and, obviously Kittles much, much more. The wild card for me is Brandon Ayuk because they don't do a whole lot of different things with him. They line him up, and he is their guy that they want to hit down the field. But they do a lot of motioning. They do a lot of shifting. They try to keep you. It's a lot of window dressing, and I get the sense that, when you realize that they truly only have a handful of formations and a handful of plays. They just window dress it with formation with guys being in different positions. And when you can begin to see it from that standpoint, then you can prepare a lot differently. Now, there's no doubt about it, the key to this offense is Christian McCaffrey, because if you go back and you look at the 3 games spent where they lost 3 games in a row, Christian was hurt one game. He had the groin issue. Then they didn't run the ball all that well in the next 2 games, even though Christian came back the next week. So if you look at it, those 3 games are the worst rushing outputs that the 49ers had all season long. And to me, that's why they lost the game, because Brock Purdy needs a good running game that allows him to go play action, bootleg, and misdirection. Now he can throw the ball on rhythm and on time and is extremely accurate with his ball. But if you can take away the run and make him play the game from the pocket, move him off his spot, and get away from his first read, now you have an opportunity to make him look average. But if all the elements are where they need to be, you got problems. But if you nullify the run, then you can nullify the elements of what makes this offense as potent as it is.
You're listening to 3-time Pro Bowler, former Eagle, Seth Joyner. You know what, Seth? I got to tell you something. Like, you always try to come up with somebody who reminds you of somebody else, but, And we've been trying to do that with Purdy for the last year. But you know what? And I know Theismann's a Hall of Famer, but there are similarities between Theismann and Purdy, and I hadn't put those two together, but they do have similarities. I think, and that's an interesting point you brought up.
Well, listen, I'm not one of those guys. I don't like comparisons because
right.
ages and eras are different. Like we can talk about LeBron and we can talk about Jordan all we want, but they both played in different eras. What would Michael Jordan look like in this era? He'd probably still be great. What would LeBron look like in Jordan's era? So let's just enjoy these guys in the eras that they play in and say, hey, they were greats in their own eras. When it comes to, football players, the game has changed. Brock Purdy is not playing under the same pretenses that, a Joe Theismann had to play under. So the dynamics are different. Players, listen, these players, the arm is stronger. They're throwing the ball probably 25 to 30% more than they did in that era. And a lot of these guys are a lot more athletic, than most of those quarterbacks in that era ever were. They were just pocket passes. Don't be fooled by Brock Purdy. He's not a guy that's just going to stand back there and let you sack him. He's got athleticism, and he can get out of the pocket, and he can convert, with his legs on third downs when he needs to. Now, he doesn't want to because the way that this offense is constructed is to throw the ball on rhythm, to throw it on time off a play-action pass and bootleg and misdirection. But when everything goes to hell in the handbasket, if you don't keep him in the pocket and you don't contain him, he can hurt you. So it's hard to find that guy, from past eras or the current era that you can say this is who he looks like, because he's a combination of a couple of different things. He runs when he needs to. He throws the ball on rhythm and time when he has to, and he runs, and he's very accurate, and he runs the offense the way that Kyle Shanahan wants it to be run. That's why they've gotten rid of so many other guys who have had some success, or guys who have been expected to have some success, that they've paid a lot of money to and put a high draft pick in because he operates in a way that they never could.
Seth, you were part of some of the best defensive units to ever do it. I can remember, rest in peace, Jerome Brown and Reggie White and Eric Allen. And when you look at this Niner front and defense, a lot of it is Bosa, newly acquired Chase Young, Hargrave. I get it. But when you see number 54 perform, Fred Warner at linebacker, can you walk us through what you see?
He is the modern day inside linebacker, because most teams nowadays, because of personnel, most teams are basically a 4-2 front. And for the teams who do not value the linebacker position, in my opinion, they find themselves in a myriad of problems, because it's not like you run a 4-3 where you got 4 down and 3 linebackers on the field, or a 3-4 where you got 3 down and 4 linebackers on the field. You literally only have 2 linebackers on the field nowadays. So at least one of those guys better be a hellraiser. Y'all got 2. Greenlaw is just as good, in my opinion. He just doesn't get to shine. He's just as good as Warner, in my opinion. He is the quintessential linebacker of today's age. He can run, he can rush, he can cover. He's smart. He understands run fits better than most linebackers that I've seen in the modern game. Most guys don't even know where to fit. If you don't put them in a 5-man front and give them a one-gap-to-flow responsibility, they have no idea how to even read blocking schemes, because nowadays I get the sense that a lot of these linebackers are reading the backfield instead of the offensive line to tell them what the play actually is and where the run play is actually going. So to me, he's the full package, man. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. I mean, the dude running the full 440, he can get anywhere on the field he wants to, but he's smart enough, to not have to stress himself to be able to get there, because he's very smart and understands how he's being attacked and where he's being attacked and what teams' tendencies are. So he's never out of position. He's never taken false steps, and he's never guessing.
Seth, you got a prediction for us?
Well, listen, I think it's going to be a knockdown drag out. The Eagles have figured out and found every conceivable way that you could think of to win this football game. It's, really, I don't like to give predictions because there are so many factors that go into it. I mean, you can go into last year's game, and who would have thought that the Eagles were going to be able to put 31 points on that defense? And you can talk about Purdy not being there, but when they came in the Lincoln Financial Field last year, they were the number one ranked defense darn near across the board. They were number one in points, yet they gave up, and this is the thing that people don't remember. They gave up 31 points to the Eagles, So, yeah, Brock is a difference maker. But, also the Eagles, he didn't just bow out of the game. The Eagles forced him out of the game, but with how they played. And that's another dynamic of this whole thing that, people don't want to look at, don't want to, back in our day, it was about knocking guys out of the game. Let's see what the backup can do. As inhumane as that might sound, that's the way we played the game. And I'm not saying that Hassan Reddick was trying to put him out of the game. He was playing the game hard. He was playing it fast, and it was an unfortunate situation. And then they had another quarterback that came in, and he got hurt as well. The Eagles forced those things, So to be honest with you, you could go the complete opposite direction. It could be the 49ers doing that, this game. So I'm not going to say one way or the other. Listen. If I'm looking at the body of work, the 49ers the last 2 weeks have played extremely well, okay? The Eagles have found a myriad of different ways to win. They beat two teams in the last 2 weeks that were in the AFC that were perennial, supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, coming back from 10 points. So it's hard for me to say, that the Eagles don't stand a chance. But it's also hard for me to say that, now you got San Francisco fully healthy and hitting on all cylinders, that they don't stand a chance. I'm just looking forward to the best game that's probably going to be on TV during this season because these teams don't like each other, and they're going to lay it all out on the line. They're going to be out for blood. It's going to be a lot of chirping. It's going to be chippy. The weather's going to be crappy. It's going to be an old school smash mouth style game. And they're only going to be able to throw the ball when they have to. So I'm looking forward to that more than anything, more than me wanting to predict, how it's going to turn out. I'm just glad that we're going to see a defensive battle. It's just going to be a straight up battle royal, man.
Let's go.
Hey, Seth, great stuff, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Great info, great knowledge, and enjoy the game this weekend.
You guys, my man. You guys do the same.